At 11:46 p.m., surrounded by the absolute power of the British monarchy, King Charles literally collapses to the cold hardwood floor, his lungs seizing the exact second after finding a decades-old private note concealed inside the false bottom of Princess Diana's mahogany jewelry box. For 25 years, the world believed they knew the complete tragedy of the people's princess and the stoic burden of the sovereign. But the agonizing, history-altering truth rested silently within a velvet drawer, waiting for the one man who physically could not bear its weight. As the king's pulse fades with the weathered parchment clutched in his trembling hand, the entire narrative of the crown shatters in a single, desperate breath. What terrifying secret did she lock away that possessed the power to break a reigning monarch? Why did she leave this specific private note for him to find only after he finally took the throne? And what devastating, untold truth was resting inside Princess Diana's jewelry box that ultimately made King Charles collapse? The heavy oak doors of the Clarence House archives clicked shut, sealing King Charles III in total isolation. It was Tuesday, 11:42 p.m. The only sound was the steady, rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock. On the leather-topped desk before him sat a piece of history that had remained untouched for 25 years. Princess Diana's mahogany jewelry box. Earlier that evening, Chief Archivist Arthur Thorne had brought the box to the king with a trembling hand. Thorne, a man whose tailored Savile Row suits and aristocratic lineage spoke of a lifetime serving unparalleled wealth, bowed deeply. His eyes darted nervously to the diamond-encrusted sovereign's ring, heavy on Charles's hand. "Your Majesty," Thorne murmured, his voice barely rising above the hum of the climate-controlled vault. "Forgive the intrusion. We were preparing the Spencer Sapphire Suite for the Jubilee exhibition. But there is an anomaly." Charles, surrounded by priceless Renaissance tapestries and gold-leafed volumes that defined his absolute status, frowned. "Speak plainly, Arthur." "The box, sir," Thorne stammered, gesturing to the polished antique wood, a masterpiece worth more than most countryside estates. "The palace was preparing a public exhibition, but I noticed a chilling physical discrepancy. The box is exactly 14 inches deep on the outside. Yet, the internal velvet drawers measured only 11. 3 inches of solid space are unaccounted for." Now, alone in the dim amber light, Charles ran his aged fingers along the worn wood, feeling a sudden, strange weight in his chest. Why? A memory from 1994 suddenly pierced his mind. The opulent halls of Kensington Palace had been freezing that winter, suffocated by the tension of their impending divorce. Charles remembered the rigid, calculating glare of his mother, the late Queen, during a private dinner weeks prior, a cold, unspoken threat that hung over his claim to the throne, a subtle sign that the monarch was making her own ruthless plans. But it was what he found later that truly haunted him. During the height of their bitter separation, he had walked into Diana's private sitting room to find her frantically pressing a silver hairpin into the base of this very box. "What on earth are you doing?" he had demanded, the heavy gold links on his cuffs catching the firelight. She snapped it shut, her eyes wide and terrified, but fiercely defiant. "Ensuring the boys have something the firm can never edit," she had whispered, clutching the velvet tightly against her silk evening gown. He had dismissed it then as her usual paranoia. Tonight, 30 years later, that memory made his blood run cold. Charles picked up a heavy silver paperclip from his desk. He straightened the metal, his breath growing shallow in the suffocating quiet. He tilted the mahogany box. There, hidden perfectly beneath the bottom right bronze hinge, was a microscopic pinhole. He inserted the wire. Click. The mechanical sound echoed like a gunshot. Charles stepped back as a spring-loaded wooden panel smoothly slid away, revealing a lead-lined false compartment. There were no missing sapphires inside. There was only a thick envelope, sealed with the red wax crest of the Spencer family, not the Windsor crown. On the front, written in Diana's unmistakable, looping handwriting, were the words, "For Charles, to be read only when the boys are safe." Safe? Safe from whom? The king reached for the wax seal, his heart hammering violently against his ribs. The heavy Spencer wax shattered under the king's thumb like brittle glass. His trembling hands unfolded the thick, cream-colored parchment. At the top right corner, the date was penned in stark black ink. August 20th, 1997. 11 days before the Parisian tunnel. 11 days before the world broke. Charles braced himself, gripping the mahogany edge of the desk. He expected a list of his failures, a fiery posthumous attack from a woman stripped of her royal security and her Royal Highness title. But the voice in the ink was entirely different. It was hauntingly calm. "Charles," he read aloud, his voice cracking in the absolute silence of the royal vault. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and enough time has passed that you are finally sitting on the throne. I am writing this to give you the one thing you never gave me, the truth." The king's gaze dropped to the second paragraph, and his entire understanding of his own legacy began to violently unravel. "You have spent the last 5 years believing I tried to destroy your right to be king," the letter continued, her elegant loops slicing through his defenses. "But you never knew what your own mother was planning behind the closed doors of Balmoral." A sudden, suffocating memory gripped him. He vividly recalled the brutal winter of 1995. The monarchy had been drowning in their public divorce wars, and the Queen's private secretaries had quietly, inexplicably, stopped sending Charles the red sovereign dispatch boxes for 3 entire weeks. He had assumed it was a temporary bureaucratic punishment from his mother. It wasn't. He read the next line, the blood draining from his face. "Your mother drafted a formal decree of exclusion in December 1995, Charles. She decided to bypass you entirely, forcing your abdication so the crown would pass directly to William." Charles gasped, staggering backward. He bumped into a priceless Ming vase, sending it wobbling precariously on its marble pedestal. His mother, the stoic monarch who preached duty above all, had legally drawn up the papers to erase his reign from history. "So why are you king today?" the letter asked, anticipating his exact thought. Charles stared at the paper, suffocating under the weight of the incoming truth. His eyes raced across the parchment, the black ink blurring as tears broke his stoic, royal composure. "She summoned me to Sandringham," Diana wrote. "She offered me a terrifying trade. Sign over uncontested custody of William and Harry. In exchange, she would officially sign the exclusion decree, exact my revenge, and ensure our son would wear the crown the moment she passed." Charles felt the opulent room spinning. He vividly remembered the surreal shift in 1996 when Diana inexplicably folded during their divorce negotiations. She had shockingly surrendered her highs, her Royal Highness title, and, fatally, her royal security detail, leaving her dangerously unprotected in the streets of Paris. Charles had smugly believed she had simply lost the legal war against the palace machine. "I told her no, Charles," the letter declared with fierce maternal defiance. "I told her you were flawed, and you broke my heart, but you are their father. A boy needs to see his father wear the crown before he is crushed by its weight. I threatened to expose her plot to the press unless she burned the decree. I surrendered my title, my protection, and my safety so you could keep your birthright." The realization struck the king with the force of a physical blow. The woman he believed was his greatest adversary had sacrificed her freedom and her life to protect his throne. "I am leaving this world, carrying the blame, so you can carry the crown," the final lines read. "Rule well. Tell Camilla I forgive her. We were all just pieces on a board we didn't build. Protect our boys." The sheer psychological agony of a 25-year misunderstanding seized his chest. and his heart rhythm violently stuttered. The heavy sovereign's ring scraped against the mahogany desk as he gasped for air that wouldn't come. "Diana," he choked out. King Charles III crumpled, hitting the cold hardwood floor with a sickening thud, his left hand paralyzed in a death grip around the faded letter. Hours later, the frantic beeping of a cardiac monitor pierced the sterile silence of the palace medical wing. Charles opened his heavy eyes to find Prince William clutching his hand, pale and terrified. "Papa," William whispered, his voice trembling, "you had a cardiac event. Arthur said they found you with Mother's box. What happened?" Charles looked at his eldest son, bearing the crushing weight of a crown he now knew he owed to a martyr. To speak the truth would destroy William's memory of his beloved grandmother. "Nothing, my boy," the king lied, protecting his son, just as Diana had protected him. Just an old memory that finally found its peace.